All right. Hi there, Scott. Welcome to the We Are Superman podcast from Northern Ireland. This is awesome. So great to have you.
Bill, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast. And yeah, it's 5:30 p.m. in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Just starting to get dark.
Nice. And of course, we're in the morning here in Colorado, and we're having a typical Colorado winter day. It's going to be almost 70 degrees, and I don't know what that is in Celsius, but 20 degrees maybe. I don't know. It's supposed to be warm here, which is pretty crazy.
Yes, 70 degrees is probably a summer all-time high in Northern Ireland. So enjoy that. Enjoy
Y-
that.
Yeah, well, we're only a
Appreciate
day,
it.
yeah, we're only a day away or two from snow, probably. That's the way it is around here. But no, I'm excited to have you on here. One of the things we do in the We Are Superman podcast, talk to a lot of people who have taken control, if you would, of medical conditions they've had. In our American medical system, we're kind of geared towards treating the problem and not getting outside the box so much. And I think the way you've treated coming down with Parkinson's has been very much outside the box that I think a lot of people here would love to hear more about.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, it's been quite a mad few years and it's been quite a journey, but thankfully the outcome so far, touch wood, has been fantastic. Interesting that you say outside the box, which is obviously a phrase I use a lot. I should say as well that I'm not medical. I'm not your guru. I'm not a therapist. This is just my lived experience the last 7 years. And over those years, I've become super informed and met and talked to a lot of amazing people. So I should have said that to start. So outside the box, it became pretty quick whenever I was diagnosed. I'm not sure there was a box. And what I mean by that is heart, chest, stroke, cancer, a lot of diseases. Medicine do amazing things, and a lot of money has been poured into that.
Right.
And rightly so, because it's been the biggest killer, the biggest threat to society. So that's not a criticism. That's completely the logical thing to do. But whenever it comes to diseases like Parkinson's, ALS, as you would call it, motor neuron disease, psychiatric, mental health, whenever you get into that zone, I don't know if there is a box. If there is a box, the walls aren't very tall or very solid. There's just not a lot of knowledge on it. So it's quite easy to to take a different path because the convention for this disease is really the medical treatment of it. It's really in its infancy. Neuroscience is really very new to medicine relative to conventional medicine and doctors that you and I think of and your listeners will see on TV shows. But thank you. I did think outside the box, but it's not a clearly defined space.
No, and neurology in general is you're right. It is very much unknown, unfixable, whatever. There's not a lot that goes on there, despite all the money that is poured into Parkinson's foundations. I'm sure they've got something similar in Northern Ireland as we have in the US, doing research and trying to come up with both preventatives, cures, treatments, what have you. Um, Certainly, yeah, tons of money have gone into cancer research, heart disease research, diabetes, et cetera. But why do you think it is that in neurology in general that they are so far behind?
Oh goodness, have I been asked that question before, Bill? Why are they so far behind? I think there's lots of different reasons for that. Medicine, your doctors, I suspect in Colorado and throughout the US will be no different to UK and Ireland. You go and see a consultant who's 20 years out of medical school and he was using the textbooks and the medicine that was being taught from the generation before and generation before that. So the knowledge and the expertise, but also the criteria of medical schools, it's using very, very dated principles because they know it's tried and tested. It's the biggest threat and killer. And that's what's really being taught. So I think neuroscience, I don't know the exact dates, but in the pretty recent past, all that psychiatry stuff, it was all bumpkin and bah humbug and what do you mean about placebo effect? It was very much considered to be voodoo witch doctory for quite a long time. So I'm not sure when the pivot point was, but as far as medical history is concerned, it's very much the new kid on the block. So it's
Hmm.
going to take a while for knowledge to creep up that curve. I think as well, we were talking earlier, Bill, just before we started recording, you have a problem with your foot. I broke a tiny wee muscle in my hand, fractured it called the scaphoid. I think if you're an orthopedic surgeon or an eye surgeon or what my daughters used to call a blood doctor, they cut things up.
Kind of
It
like the
you
old
are
bloodletting in the medieval days, right?
yeah, yeah. Um, you are fixing a physical problem, just like woodwork or a plumber or more primitive man. You've got a fractured femur, hip, scapula. You're going in and there's a physical thing and you're fixing a physical thing and you're fixing it and you're putting it back together. And I'm not trying to belittle the amazing things surgeons do, but it's a lot more logical to do that than to dig into my substantia nigra and how my dopamine transmits command signals as well as reward and enjoyment. It transmits the neurotransmitter, of which there's gazillions of them. It transmits through my brain and various parts of my body every single motor function I have, whether it's conscious or unconscious. Where do you start with that? I mean, that's a monumental task.
Yeah, it's kind of like asking a plumber to work on your electrical wiring. It's just, just a whole different area there, and it's
Yeah.
very abstract at that point to the plumber. Um, it kind of reminds me several years ago, I had issues going on with my hands and feet. I saw a neurologist. Eventually, I got diagnosed with Raynaud's disease, um,
Ah,
which you're probably familiar with. But the neurologist, he was a great guy. Trying to remember his last name. He had just this funny last name. I mean, just, Doctor. God, I'm trying to remember. It was just a funny name. Just, but in any case, he told me this joke. He said there was a couple doctors or a couple people, whatever, up in a hot air balloon, and they're floating along and they're lost. And they look down on the ground, and there's a neurologist standing down on the ground. And they go, "Hey, Doctor Neurologist there, where are we?" And the neurologist says, "You're in a hot air balloon." So the moral of his story was that, like, neurologist can tell you what's wrong with you. He just can't tell you
yeah.
what to do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that might be right.
Yeah.
That might be right. But there, I mean, there's some huge advancements going on. And with Parkinson's, we're sort of coming to the back end of the story and back to front, but we'll go down a few rabbit holes, I'm sure. But whenever you get to stage 4 or 5, or at certain stages, whenever you progress and you've had it and the disease is really screwing with you, thankfully I didn't get to that stage. Not yet, and hopefully won't, but let's see about that. They do something known as deep brain stimulation.
Mm,
So there is some pretty groovy stuff that they can do in deep brain stimulation. Stimulation is, well, historically they would drill a small hole in your skull and they would agitate a certain part that would poke and prod the neurotransmitters. So, hey, come on,
right.
you guys, get your ass moving. Now they can do it with something that's subcutaneous and there's not a permanent visit to get your brain stimulated. It all happens. So there is some amazing stuff going on, but yeah, it's still very much at the margins. And certainly as for the cause of it and prevention of it and treating it early, I've not come across any real knowledge or anything groundbreaking. I think maybe stem cell research might change that. There was quite a bit in my news feed only in the last couple of weeks about something that's been approved quite quick by the FDA. So who knows? But I think probably a good way to explain and demonstrate that is whenever I was eventually diagnosed post a brain scan in nuclear medicine at the Royal Victoria Hospital, Belfast, an amazing place. You know, that first consultation post diagnosis, formal diagnosis, the summary of it was, we don't know much about this. There's not much we can do. We'll review every 6 months. And whenever you deteriorate, which probably won't be for quite a while, we will give you some medicine, which will do one of two things. It'll be effectively an artificial dopamine, or it will be a medicine that will hopefully stimulate your neurotransmitters to push out and send out the dopamine that you do have more efficiently. But that's it. So it's come every 6 months. And whenever things look starting to look pretty shit, then we'll give you a bit of medicine.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and
Now,
that sounds like the American medical system for you right there. It's like, yeah, let's just let it progress and go ahead and um, we'll give you some meds because that's what makes us money or whatever. So let's step back
yeah,
then, Scott. Let's we can talk about your version of treatment that you took on instead, which I love.
yeah.
But let's step back even further to when this all began for you because you were people who have Parkinson's aren't born with it. It's something you're living your life, and all of a sudden, bam, here comes Parkinson's, right?
Yeah, it's, I believe it's the fastest growing disease in the Western world.
No
I'm
kidding.
gonna,
Wow.
yeah, well, that's what I've read. Um, Maybe I haven't fact checked that very scientifically, but if I see that quite a lot, it's certainly on the rise, massively on the
Was
rise.
it misdiagnosed before? Did they just miss it? People would have symptoms and just not know it was Parkinson's, or is it actually happening more often than it had been?
I couldn't give you a medical or a particularly informed answer on that, but my gut on that from my knowledge is that no, it wasn't being missed. There's probably two reasons why it's increasing. People are living longer
Right?
because of the advancement of medicine and science. Unfortunately, their health span isn't matching their lifespan, and we're living longer, but we're just seeing more people who are older but are inevitably going to get chronically ill.
Sure.
And as a result of that, then people are being detected more frequently because there's a bigger herd of the populace is getting to 79, not 77, etc., etc. And typically Parkinson's, I believe, would be diagnosed in the 70s. I think that's the average age of diagnosis. So I think probably people are living longer. You know, my dad died at 71. Maybe he was going to get Parkinson's. He just died too bloody young because of cardiac issues.
Sure.
Yeah, so maybe that. Sorry, I lost the thread. What was your the other
No,
part of your
just
question?
going back to the beginning of when
Yeah.
things
Okay.
started
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
hitting for you.
So
Yeah.
it was just over 7 years ago. I was age 51, and I was not in great shape at that time. I'd let myself go a bit because of a prolapsed disc and lifestyle, et cetera, et cetera. So wasn't in great shape, wasn't overly proud of that, but life got in the way. I had a young family. And whenever I was 50 pounds lighter and had hair, I was an army officer. So
Right.
I'm not a British army officer. So I'm not the sort of sit on the sofa do nothing guy. I'm not like you. I'm not an ultra marathon runner or an Ironman. Far from it. And whenever people from CrossFit Belfast hear that, they'll certainly have a giggle. But I wasn't sedentary. So I knew something wasn't quite right. I was getting the odd twitch in my hand and a bit of an odd feeling, and then the odd just just fleeting and momentary. And that progressed, and it tended to get worse at night, or certainly whenever I was at rest. And as I've just suggested, I wasn't a particularly sedentary person, so I didn't sit down a lot. You know, I was always on the move, moving
Right.
targets. Moving targets harder to hit, isn't that right?
Yes.
So, but whenever I did relax, like proper relax, whether that be on the couch watching a bit of TV at the end of the day, or more likely whenever I was resting in bed and not pre-sleep, just the twitches were getting more and more frequent. And in my heart, in my head, I knew that something wasn't quite right, but I chose to ignore it for a while. A, because it wasn't that significant. B, guys do that. They ignore medical stuff, don't they?
Oh, for
Sort
sure.
of we're sort of more bit morons, a bit moronic when it comes to that. And I was just traveling with work. And so I did ignore it for quite a while. And then just something happened, particularly where I was out for a walk and my foot just stuck to the sidewalk, to the pavement, and wasn't painful. It didn't last more than, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 seconds. But it was just really weird because you're just staring at a body part that wasn't moving, but the rest of my body had turned left. So that was for me, that was the flag that said, you better go and speak to somebody about this. You can't ignore that for
Yeah.
any longer. So off I went to my family doctor, my GP, who referred me to a neurologist who put me through something known as a DAT scanner, dopamine transporter scan, DAT scanner, and the outcome of that, the results for that, when I was advised of them, it indicated that the brain scan showed that I had Parkinson's disease. And that was a Christmas time whenever I was, yeah, 51.
Wow. Yeah. Merry Christmas, huh?
Yeah, Merry Christmas. It was a it was funny. I think it was literally 5 or 6 days before Christmas. It was certainly just 1 or 2 days before my kids came back from university, from college, as you would say. Belfast is part of the United Kingdom in many regards, and although we live in Belfast, my kids were in Glasgow, which is in Scotland, and Durham, which is in England. So yeah, same country but different landmass. So we didn't see them a lot. They didn't just pop home for the weekend. They weren't 100 miles up the road. So they all came back, and life was busy, 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 busy. And Christmas, usual chaos of Christmas.
Yeah.
I think we were probably doing Christmas, so we just, it was all hands on deck. Everybody to the wheelhouse, and I, well, I sort of ignored it, as did my wife. We didn't ignore it, but we chose to consider that after the festivities had died down and we had time to sit down and reflect. So yeah, it was a bit of an odd period. Kids went back to university. We
Yeah.
didn't say anything. We didn't say anything for quite a while, which, looking back, that was a bit of a mistake, but it was done for the right reasons, with the right intentions at the time.
What
And
was your thinking? I heard your daughter's interview talking about how they were unaware of this for a couple of
yeah,
years, really, right? What was your thinking
yeah,
about that?
thinking about how did I feel, or what was my logic for not
The
sharing that.
logic for not sharing it. Yeah.
Um, I suppose at the time it was, I didn't want to upset them, distress them. I was living a normal life. I wasn't being hugely debilitated.
Right.
Now that did progress, but I was living a normal life, and the symptoms were quite predictable because I only got to really stage two. That gives the 5 stages, five considered where you're entering the terminal phase. And so I was able to mask it, I suppose would be the honest word to say. And we didn't want to disturb them. They had important exams. A few of them had other life events, and it never seemed to be the right time. I think I would have told them quite a bit sooner, but it wasn't just my decision. And let's not talk anymore about that. But it was well intended and didn't cause them any distress, but never came to it. Yeah, we made a family pact that we wouldn't shield or hide anything like that again.
Okay.
360 for all of
Right.
us. Yeah.
Sure.
Did you find that odd?
No, I don't find it odd. It's just an item of curiosity.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody approaches a situation like that differently, and nothing is right, nothing's wrong. It's just,
Yeah.
how you chose to handle it, and so that's why I was curious to hear, like, why did you choose to do it that way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also it's my disease.
Yeah.
We're going to come on to it in a second, I suspect, but it was my disease. And although I didn't do enough of the right stuff for a good 2 or 3 years, Bill, I did something at the time which was partly conscious, partly unconscious. And I recognize it and see it for what it is a lot more today than I did at the time. But I very much constantly decided that I was not going to let this disease dictate my life and define me.
Nice.
I could see other people's reactions, from the information that is supplied to you, and what to expect when you tell people, what to expect when you're diagnosed. And people were naturally shocked, frightened, anxious, all the things that you would imagine with diagnosis of an incurable degenerative neurological disease that's really, really going to leave you in a pretty bad way downstream. I absolutely made a choice that I was not going to think like that. And I wasn't in denial mode. I was not sticking my head in the sand, but I put the lid on that box and was not going to let my thoughts default to, oh God, what's happening?
Right.
I was very consciously not going to let my thoughts go to the negative bias.
Or the feeling for sorry for yourself mode or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I had a few dark moments, of course, and the odd time I did think, oh God, that was mostly around, could this be hereditary for my children?
Oh, yeah.
Obvious, obvious question. There's no real consensus on that because there's so little known about the disease.
Hmm.
But I think
Interesting.
the general consensus is that no, it's not hereditary, and
No, that's good.
we've had that conversation. I've had a lot of DMCs, as the kids would call it, deep and meaningful conversations about all that. So I don't think it's hereditary. So yeah, I had my dark moments, but I very much made a conscious decision. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I truly believe now that that was the start of why my Parkinson's journey and experience has been totally different to 98, 95, like the overwhelming majority of people with Parkinson's.
Yeah. Was that kind of thinking on your part, Scott? Was it um, kind of hard baked into you already, even before your diagnosis? Was it maybe it comes from your military background, or maybe was it just part of your personality, or is it something a resolve that came about because of the diagnosis, do you think?
Oh, goodness. I've given so much thought to this. I think it was a bit of a combination. Um, I was very fortunate in the household that I was brought up. There's a lot of love. And my mum had been quite ill for all of her life. And there was never any drama or OMG, or it was, you know, maybe there's a bit of denial there of mum. I'm not sure, but that's not overly relevant. That it was the family were, and it wasn't stiff upper lip. Don't worry about, if my head's falling off, we'll just ignore it and smile. Everything is well. That it wasn't that. It really wasn't that. It was right. So I've got Crohn's. This is my mum. I've got Crohn's, and I'm just gonna live my best life. It was always very drama-free existence. So I think I was very, very privileged, and I'm super grateful that was my background. So that's going to be a huge contributor to it.
Oh
Certainly,
yeah.
whenever I saw a therapist and saw a clinical psychologist about other stuff, we drifted off into that. And that was, she said, yeah, you massive box tick. So I'm very fortunate about that. And if your listeners didn't have that experience, then they can't replicate that. They are where they are with that. But I think that was maybe the seed. And then you touched on the military. And obviously, I saw stuff at a young age. I left whenever I was 27. So, I was a young officer, for just a handful of years. But I saw stuff that the people I went to school with, my friends and my peers, didn't see. I had to make decisions that other people didn't see.
Right.
And during the training at the military, we were taught something known as mission analysis. And if you don't mind, I won't go into too much detail because it really is quite an in-depth
Yeah.
subject. It took me months to master, months and months to master during training, and ultimately at Sandhurst. And but basically, mission analysis is a process that trains you to look at a hard situation where you can very quickly look at the options. You can analyze it. I'm moving my head because I'm at option one, option two, option three. And you, it's a process where you analyze all the different options that are open to you. You quickly then, or as quick as you can, from an informed position, you discount the least preferable option, and you then it enables you to make a decision about the best course of action where you're feeling confident about it. And that whole process is designed where it can take a lot of emotion, if not all the emotion out of it. That's, I'm talking a lot here. Is
No,
that
no, I
easy to
like it.
follow?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think anybody that and I dare say the US and most of the world's forces use something very, very similar to it. But I look back now and I'm definitely grateful that I had that because you're taught how to deal with hard stuff, but look at it analytically using all the factors. And there's a whole thing I could ream off verbatim. I'll remember it even if I've got Alzheimer's, I suspect. Um, Verbatim to think of all the factors and come to a really, really good option with no
You know, it
emotion.
reminds me a lot of the mathematics training that I had in college. I was a math major, and you learn a lot about that way about deductive thinking. And
Yeah.
I think a very practical analogy that many people can relate to is when you take a standardized exam here, you'll have like five multiple or five options for a multiple choice question. And with the deductive reasoning, you take a look at it and there's an emphasis on those tests for speed. And so you want to just choose the most logical answer and move on. So you look at the five options and you can immediately eliminate one or two of them. You know, it's
Yeah.
just like, okay, it's obviously not those two answers. Then you get down
Okay.
to the last three, and maybe one of them seems less likely, and you eliminate it. And then between the other two, maybe you just say, okay, that one I think is probably the best. I haven't actually worked out the whole problem precisely, but you know what? I need to make a decision to move on. And it sounds like you kind of went through that same sort of process that I'm going to eliminate a lot of the garbage out there and be able to
Yeah.
then focus on what seem to be the most likely possibilities.
Yeah. That sounds like a very, very similar process.
Right.
Obviously in the military, which is very different to what you're talking about and what I then applied to many real life situations, including my Parkinson's. The military is done with a lot more precision because
Oh yeah.
if you make the wrong decision, you're in the wrong place. Whenever you called in a motor or fast airstrike, people people get deaded. As my kids used to say, it results in casualties. So
Yes.
it's pretty damn precise out of necessity.
Yep.
Thankfully, I most of that was taught, but not have to be used. I've had trauma in my 20s, and I think I dealt with it well. I got into a bit of a pickle whenever I was in Venezuela during a military coup, and also, as a teenager in Belfast during the Troubles, I don't remember it as being bad. I had the most amazing teenage life, but God, you look back at it. I just went to school and there was bombs going off and police cordons. That was my normal.
Right.
But I'm not going to count that as trauma. But I was very
No.
fortunate. But yeah, like when you, I've dealt with a lot of stuff. My daughter, who's my younger, well, both my daughters, but my younger daughter, who's, what did she now, 26, 27, coming 27, 26. And I was fortunate to hang out with her on an island in Indonesia. And this is a girl who's very robust. She's independently traveled on her own from the age of 17. She did North America top to bottom just last year and had the most amazing experiences and climbed lots of peaks. And yeah, she did it on her own, but just met the most amazing people. So She's not the classic Gen Z constantly swiping on her phone. Of course, she does that, as do I. The point I'm getting to here is she commented to me, she said, "Oh my God, the stuff you had done, endured, and experienced by the time you got to my age, everybody's saying you were so brave going to Medellin on your own by going up the various mountains on your own doing X, Y, Z. But what you did just shadows what I've done, which I disagreed with. But I had lots of experience in how to deal with hard situations, and it seems that I did a reasonable job at it. I don't want to sound like a arrogant so and so here, but that's just the fact, Bill.
Yeah, and Scott, I think what makes us alive is taking on challenges, and challenges are different for everybody. I mean, it could be climbing Mount Everest, or maybe for somebody who's dealing with severe disability, maybe it's getting up out of their chair and walking down a hallway. You talk about your daughter's situation there. I look at traveling as a bit of a challenge too. I've done a lot of traveling in recent years where you don't know anything what's going on. I mean, you just jump into a situation, and it's not that much different than running an ultra marathon, where quite often you're getting yourself in a lot of places you've just never experienced before. And we were talking off air about my experience of riding a scooter in Bali. Um, I mean, that was one of the biggest challenges. I mean, the comfortable thing might have been in Bali to go sit on a beach somewhere, because we all know how to sit on a beach. But my travel partner and I, we rented scooters. Literally had no idea how these things worked. It's like how anything would work in this country is not the way it works in Indonesia. And had to figure out on the fly how to make this thing work. Driving on the
Yep.
left side of the road, by the way, which you may be used to, but we're not here. And
Oh yes, of course. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and then
I didn't have that, but that wouldn't bother me.
yeah, exactly. But we were on the left side of the road, and the roads there are total chaos. I mean, you've got
Oh,
scooters and cars and bike
livestock, holes in the
livestock,
road.
people. Yeah, I mean, rough roads, people driving on the sidewalks to get around things, and we're just out there, trying to mind our own business, so to speak. It was hairy as hell, but it's a challenge, and you're just getting out of your comfort zone, and you're just saying, "Screw it." I mean, that was probably close. It's probably closer to dying doing that than any other of the crazy things I've done, but still. Um,
Yeah, but did you die?
didn't I have good stories to
No.
tell about it now, right? And that's what
Good.
your daughter was doing, though. She was getting out, taking on a challenge, exploring the
Well,
world. It's great.
yeah, like nobody remembers the day that nothing happened. So you made a really, really good point, and I'd like to go back to it if I may, Bill. You just said, ultra marathons, or if it's doing X, Y, Z. I think it's really, really important. I'm a bit worried that the last thing I said might be misunderstood. Where your starting point is totally irrelevant. That's your reality. That's my reality. So running an ultra marathon, as you do a lot, I mean, that is out with my capabilities currently, and certainly on my radar and on my plans. And maybe if you're really anxious, you've got a lot of mental health issues, maybe just actually leaving your apartment and using public transport, maybe just leaving your apartment and being in crowds and going to the store, maybe that's a huge achievement. And that is as remarkable as an achievement as my Parkinson's story, as I went to Lisbon, Portugal to see my other daughter's boyfriend do an Ironman with his friends. It's all those small wins. If your starting point isn't somewhere different, please don't think your achievements are any less. As long as you're putting the needle in the right direction, as long as your tiny, tiny incremental movement of moving that needle from flat to towards the red zone, doesn't matter. If you're a mile to go before you hit the red on with the needle, don't worry about that. As long as the needle's going the right way, then that's a huge achievement.
Yep. I love it. Absolutely. As some wise person once said, everybody's got their own Everest, and whatever it is. And The only way, though, to get up Everest is one step at a time. It's like, how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. It's
Yeah,
just just got to keep making progress all the time, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes those steps aren't evenly spaced apart, which would be absolutely accurate of my story. So I said that I put the lid on the box. I got on with normal worlds, okay,
Yeah.
and I did that, but I did that. I think probably the timeline's all a bit blurry. It's about 3 years. And looking back, somebody asked me in a recent interview, any regrets or what would you tell your former self or a listener out there? My big regret was, why the hell did I not act sooner? But I then really didn't move forward or take any step forward. I didn't eat any of that elephant for the guts of 3 years. I ignored it, and not ignored it as in, yeah, no, I probably did ignore it, but please, from a mental perspective, I didn't ignore it. I was super, super 100% certain, like, this just is not going to define me. Like, no way. And so I didn't know the mental aspect. So I was in no way anxious or stressed once I got past the kids and the hereditary stuff. So, I'd love you to ask me, well, why did you wait 3 years? And you can do it, but I won't really give you a very logical or intelligent answer. But my symptoms have got worse over those few years. And people with Parkinson's, you'll know all about this. So you get, I won't use the medical terms, but you get a tremor, you get bones freezing and not bones, body parts freezing and not moving. And you can get a lot of just brain fog. You start to think you're losing your cognitive capacity. In my case, I believe that was down to sleep deprivation because my legs were like crazy at night whenever I was at rest. And the cramps were terrible, and I could wake upside down. I could fall out of bed. I could be, who knows what was going to happen. I certainly didn't know what was going to happen. Sleep deprivation was horrendous. And yeah, it wasn't much fun. So at some point, I made a decision, right, that's enough. Playtime's over. Let's start acting on this.
Hmm.
And I wish I knew why it took me so long to make that decision. I guess probably just life was just getting a bit increasingly less tolerable. But I made a decision. I really threw something into the ground or threw a flag into the ground going, right, okay, don't be an asshole. Playtime's over. Let's grab this by the balls and let's do something with it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe part of that is the way we've been conditioned in our medical systems to say, okay, you've got this. Doc says come back in 6 months. Here, take some medicine, and we'll check again in 6 months, and then we'll adjust the amount of medicine based on what we see on the next test result. And we kind of accept that as, well, these guys are the experts, and they must know. And um, you know, obviously, as you say in retrospect, you wish maybe you wouldn't just taken that sitting down, literally. You would have got sprung into action sooner. But at some point, yeah, you do get a little impatient with kind of the answers you're getting, and you just say, "Hey, well, let's take some action." You think that's part of the component there?
Mm, no, I don't know if I would agree with that, Bill. I think it was more personal responsibility. I
Okay.
mean, I get what you're saying, but in my case, in my situation with my doctors, no, I think I'm going to say that was on me. But part of what you're saying, I really, really agree with, and that is your expectations. And what conditions one's expectations in life. Mostly it's going to be surroundings. So your expectations and all your friends in your community in Colorado will be a lot more active, doing a lot more, physical stuff than maybe Uncle Tom in, I don't know, in Vegas or in the East Coast, So
Right.
I think twinned with the mindset and having that very, very conscious make sure your energy and your thought goes to the positive as much as possible. It's okay to have a wee glance back over your shoulder the odd time, but and we're not talking about denial here. This is something really different. Is if you keep the focus on that, you're going to shift what your mind is expecting, its expectations.
Yeah.
And it would be my belief that you can train yourself and you can change what your mind expects. And there's been endless studies on this, and particularly around the placebo, massively around Parkinson's. And I believe that has been a huge contributor to why I've achieved what I've achieved. So I would encourage people to do that. So yeah, expectations maybe on medicine, and maybe if people's expectations are off the back of their interaction with their medical community, I could see that's where that's possible, but that is not my that I don't believe that's my story and my journey.
Okay.
I I've got into quite a few disagreements, particularly with medical people about expectations and what I'm talking about. And I read a book a while back and it cited a really example, which I just think whenever people are saying, oh, that's a load of nonsense, I just turn around and give them this example. And I think it's a really good world example. And it's okay, if your body doesn't react differently to how what expectations are, why can you not tickle yourself?
Why can you not what on yourself?
Tickle.
Tickle. Okay. I'm not sure if I understand.
Well, so if I go like that, or if I go like that, my
Yeah.
body knows to expect it.
Right, right.
So
Oh,
that
why can't you? Yeah, you're right. You can't make
yeah,
yourself. Yeah,
your
right.
brain is always predicting life
Yeah.
and predicting events. And because whatever way we've thought and whatever we've put into the hard drive, the brain will make you think like that. And that then affects your expectations. So am I starting to sound like I'm mad or on mushrooms at any point here? Do tell me.
Well,
Is
mushrooms are illegal in Colorado, so it's all acceptable.
oh really?
Yeah.
Okay. No, let's not have that conversation. No,
No, no.
I joke, but you know, it's all part of the mindset and the
Yeah.
importance of the mindset of my journey on, and nothing to do with anybody is in your audience that are your followers who don't have Parkinson's or aren't chronically ill. This has nothing to do with that. You know, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right.
Absolutely. So, so you got to that point where you said, okay, I'm going to change the trajectory here. Can't say that easily. And you decided to get active, correct?
Okay, we're going to pause here and you're going to have to edit. I've just seen that it looks like my charger on my computer has fused and I'm about to run out of battery. It's not charging.
Uh-oh.
Can I just jump up and find another charger?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, should only be a minute.
Okay. Okay, so at some point you decided to make a 180-degree turn, so to speak, and use activity, movement, etc., to take control of what was going on in your life, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Spring 2020, I think I just my symptoms on my lack of sleep and how it was impacting my life. I'm repeating myself now, it was time to act for me, for future me, for my family, for not being a liability on my family, for every bloody in imaginable reason. It was time to act. And I had over those years, me and other family members, we had our nose in the information trough and we were consuming knowledge as much as we could. But as I've touched on earlier, there wasn't a lot of that to be had. But I did remember an article that I'd read back in, ground zero days of my memory was it was a family husband and wife team took their 70-year-old dad along to a CrossFit gym and he absolutely loved it. And he had something going on with him. I think it was neurological, but I remembered it And I did try to find it again, but I never did. It was like page 73 of Google one night with a bottle of wine in me, probably back in the early days. So here was my logic. So being non-medical was actually a big help here because I just put the conventional thinking into the trash can. If I want to get better pecs, I'm going to bench press. If I want bigger biceps, I know exactly what I'm going to do in the gym. If I want to be better aerobically or metabolic from a metabolic conditioning point of view, I know what I'm going to do. Parkinson's disease is fundamentally a an organ within my body that isn't performing well.
Okay.
So, is it possible that, like my pecs, like my biceps, like my glutes, like my yada, 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 what about if you train that under intensity and you train it properly? Why could that not improve and get better and bigger and stronger?
Yeah.
Why not? Any reason why not, Bill?
I can't think of one. I mean, I'm
Well, I
not a
couldn't.
doctor, but it seems
No,
logical
I
in my
couldn't.
brain. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I call crayons. Whenever you're like a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, you don't get a sharp pen. Just it was like proper infant basic crayons, blank sheet of paper. That's what I came to. And I said, right, let's do it. So what do I need to do? I need to start moving with a lot more intent, uh, a lot more intensity. But concurrently, I want to exercise my brain because that's where this substantia nigra thing hangs out. So I didn't really know how to exercise your brain other than thought. And I do remember on first diagnosis, it says do try to keep your brain active, learn new skills like knitting, learn to play the banjo, things like that.
Yeah.
New stuff. So I just thought, right, okay, well, if I'm exercising really hard, really intense, and my body's under intense exercise and pressure, let's make me think in the same mode. And that means I'm having to think really fast, really hard, really efficiently to do hard physical exercise. That was my logic. And
Yeah.
off I went. Off I went. Off I was going to go. March 2020, COVID-19 hits the Western world. The global shutters come down. The circus began. I mean, obviously, the first wave of it in the first few months, I was concerned. I'm not an anti-vax. I was never in that camp, but yeah, the shutters came down the whole planet. So in a way, that was a bit of a godsend. I didn't realize at the time, certainly the first week, I was having a bit of a rant about it, but I wasn't getting on a flight for that business meeting. I wasn't going anywhere. All my time was in my control and charge.
Right.
Fortunately, I had enough bits and pieces in the garage and around the house that I could do what I've just described. And it started with a punch bag, which I dug out of the, the garage, hung up outside, got the boxing gloves on, went on YouTube, went on different apps. So working hard, sweating, jab, cross, uppercut, listen to instructions. You're having
Right.
to do that. And then whenever you're fatigued, I could literally feel my brain was getting tired. It was amazing. Skipping, you need to think. Skipping with a bit of intensity.
Yeah.
Um, if Coach Nad's listening to that, I know he still can't do double unders properly. Um, so it was actually whatever you thought about. There's quite a lot of things you could do that I had no idea what what I what I was capable of doing. So I didn't want to go on a running machine or a spin bike because yeah, I'll get up a sweat, I'll get fitter, I'll drop a bit of weight, but I'm not thinking. I could do that with my eyes closed,
Yeah.
listening to music, and if
So
there's a
that's interesting because I was trying to figure out initially why you chose to do short burst activity rather than a long cardio type activity, but I see exactly where you're getting at now.
yeah, I didn't want to do anything that was repetitive.
Right.
Just stuff that's repetitive. Your brain and your body muscle just keeps on doing it. I wanted to chance my neurological cognition.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes
All
sense.
right. So I did that. I did that for about 9 months. I also sorted out my diet a bit, tried to That's still a work in progress, and that's not a straight line by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, like I'm way lighter than I was those days. But I tried to be better with the nutrition.
In what ways?
So try to cut out the sugar,
Okay,
try to cut out processed ultra processed food, which to be honest wasn't very hard for the Hanley family because we do eat pretty clean, you know.
right.
I think I think the US average diet and the food that is on your shelves is quite different to Europe. So that wasn't a hard task. And then try to cut out all the starchy, crappy carbs, not in a scientific manner. I had a very simple mantra, and the rule was if it's white, it's shite. And that's that. Sorry for being crude, but that was how scientific I got.
Well, you changed it enough to escape the censors. That's good.
Right. Did I?
Well, there's no
Gosh.
censor here.
Oh, I thought you meant my body sensors. Right, right, right. Sorry, sorry.
Yeah, yeah, no.
Yeah, anyway, so and I knew enough about nutrition that, processed foods, carbs, starchy carbs, your body will convert that to sugar and
Right.
your body will burn sugar and always go to that as an energy source before it goes to glycogen, before it goes to fat. So the weight was coming off. And let me tell you, after 6 or 7 months, my symptoms were improving.
Hmm.
My symptoms were improving like noticeably. No, I got to a point that, I mean, it was a real wow moment, like really wow moment. And I looked ridiculous because all the shops were shut because of the stupid COVID rules, and my jeans were falling off me because I kept on going up a belt. Just the weight was
Right.
dropping off me. Yeah, but I joke, but the Parkinson's symptoms were just going, disappearing. Actually, I got distracted. So yeah, my symptoms included everything that I said, but occasional, likely very occasional, urinary incontinence, erectile dysfunction, movement disorders, cognition. Um, did it have a bit of depression, a bit of, uh, I don't know, a bit, but there was a lot going on. There's a lot of bad stuff happening that made me act in March 2020. Yeah. So anyway, I my symptoms were improving, but that then plateaued. I think probably it plateaued for two reasons. One was I I only had so much kit, a few dumbbells, a few kettlebells, a spin bike, a skipping rope, and a boxing bag. And I was finding it hard to entertain myself and to make that cognitive intensity
Yeah.
intense. And then thankfully, after I plateaued for about 3 months, and the regulations on what we were allowed to do altered in Northern Ireland, and I knew from a friend that CrossFit was you do some pretty mad, batshit crazy stuff. But what was important was looking at it and researching it before we were allowed to go in. It was always going to be constantly varied. It's going to be functional movement, which I now know is CrossFit's definition. So it was always going to be varied. It was always going to be quite difficult. And a lot of it's going to be quite technical.
Right.
Job done. Brain's hurting, body's hurting, but my brain's hurting. And then whenever I did step into CrossFit Belfast, who have been amazing, I was just very, very lucky where Google Maps took me. It happened to be the closest gym, but truly amazing. And I realized from day one, oh my God, I'm so shit at all of this. This is fantastic
Hmm.
because my brain's going to hurt. So, yeah, I bludged on with that. And 6 months later, I declared myself symptom free.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the last time I had proper symptoms. I sort of always say 95% symptom free because there's a few things that happen sometimes. I think, that might have been Parkinson's, but it might not. I'm 59. You
Right.
do, you get muscle spasms after the gym. I'm sure you do, and lots of people do. But I
Yeah.
do want to, I do want to be an imposter. I say 95%. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less. So that combination of whatever I was doing, was it the mindset? Was it the nutrition? Was it the cognitively intense exercise? And what I started, what CrossFit then absolutely pushed me through till I got the home run on. I think it's a combination of all three of those,
Yeah.
with probably the diet in third position, and then the other two factors joint first.
Yeah. The
And
CrossFit is really known for its short burst kind of movements for one thing, as well
yeah,
as it's a little bit competitive, right? You also have the community aspect to it. There's a lot of factors that I can see all of those benefiting you with the mental, physical things that you were dealing with, right?
yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned community, because that was a real unexpected win for me.
Yeah,
Now, obviously, everybody was excited because we'd all been in lockdown for a long time.
right.
So I don't know if I joined it a year later, if I'd had the same experience. I think I probably would have done, but yeah, the sense of community, and it's very much, leave your ego at the door. And the fat bald guy, that would be me. He's getting as much love and as much praise and as much coaching and support from either the coaches or the people in the workout of the day, WOD, as the 29-year-old guy who's just simply amazing athlete at everything. I
Yeah,
think the part of community is really important. Bill, I know you're a runner, so, but I also know you're involved in a lot of other sports. I Can we maybe talk about that for a minute?
yeah,
Yeah, community. I just think, the vast majority of humans just achieve so much more when they're part of a team and they're doing something for community and helped by the community, and you're giving back to that community. And that is no small part of why I stuck at CrossFit even after I was sitting free. Absolutely amazing. And then you go back to army days. Um, it's all about the team.
yeah.
It's all
You
about the
got guys,
combined.
yeah, looking after
Yeah,
your back all the time there. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Um, I haven't mentioned it, but I coach rugby. I'm about to do it in half an hour, or when about an hour. And I love working with young, enthusiastic lads who
right.
are interested in playing a team sport.
Yeah. Do you have a rugby
Um,
background before?
no, 100%. Hi guys, you can confirm this. Uh, the worst from a technical aspect, probably the worst rugby coach at the club. From a understanding motivation, mindset, and leadership, probably the best. But more to the point, it worked with the guys I
Right.
did, and yeah,
Cool.
it was very cool. We were like the Jamaican bobsleigh team, and we managed to get we got to the final of the cup, and like everybody's going, "How is that team with that guy done it?" It was such an amazing journey.
Yeah. So, rugby isn't a huge sport in the U.S., but tell me a little bit, how old are the kids you're working with, and like what is the league? Is it a school league? Is it a club, or how does it work over there?
There's both threads. So for Northern Ireland and Belfast, you're either going to play it at school, and certain schools would be very much rugby schools, and that would be the minority of schools, or you can play club rugby,
Okay.
where you just go to a rugby club, but you are a minor. I don't know if you use that term. You're under 18. You're not an adult. So my first 4 years, I coached under 18. So the last year or two at high school. So
All right.
the guys, I've only coached male rugby. Female rugby is starting to rise. I have no experience in that. So I think the first 4 seasons, yeah, it was like 16, 17, 18-year-old boys.
All right.
And then the next four was variable age, but mostly college age kids. So the first two.
Yeah.
It was under 21s and Estonians under 21s. So they weren't all college kids. We had tradesmen and all sorts of people from all walks of life. It
Yeah.
was it was it was a great, yeah. So they were like 18 to 23. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not the most technical coach, as you said, but Do they
Oh,
do these?
definitely not.
Yeah,
Definitely
yeah,
not.
yeah. But do the kids then take more from inspiration from your story, knowing, what you've battled through? Does that have a bigger impact on them than anything else you can do with them?
I mean, it's hard to answer that and be modest, which would be my preference. But in part, it's very easy to answer because they didn't know for most of it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Certainly the under 18s, they didn't know my symptoms were just brewing. And then that team in Stonians under 21s, which was the real high point for me and the players. Yeah, I think they knew. Were they inspired? I don't know. I mean, it wasn't a huge part of me
yeah.
and why I was effective at what I did. I don't believe. It maybe added to it, but I'm going to go with no.
Okay,
You need to ask them, but
right. But you didn't have some kind of thing where like, oh, you trip on something and go, oh, that's just my Parkinson's kicking in, something like that. I mean, because the way us old people will talk about, oh, that's just my old age there. Why I couldn't remember that or something like that, you know?
um, no, because I would never say I would never even think to say that.
Yeah. All right.
Like I wouldn't make mistakes or get a bit confused about something, and they would absolutely take the you know what out of me. And we had a very robust and very open 360 relationship. It really was. Everybody in the team was at the same level of importance,
Yeah.
especially me. No, I don't know. Yeah, they had a few laughs. Probably at folly. Probably at other stuff I did. I don't think much of it was Parkinson's related. Maybe
Right.
I'll ask them. I stay in
Yeah.
touch with some of them. Yeah.
You bet. So you in one of the videos I was watching with you with all of your CrossFit coaches, partners, whatever, they talked about
Yeah.
how for a couple years they didn't know either, and then when they heard, they were in a bit of shock. They're like, "Really? He just
Yeah.
seemed like this, the this great guy who came in here and w was working hard, and now they're like, wow, that's really wild that he was battling through all that."
Yeah, that's nice. Um, that was lovely for them to say that. And there's I think there's a few other my gym members, athletes were interviewed as well. Whenever I went to CrossFit, whenever I got there, I had knocked out a lot of my symptoms.
Yeah.
I think if I'd gone at day one of whenever I pushed the button on, right, let's sort this out, they would have definitely noticed because I couldn't have held, a barbell above my head or balance, that would have been, I would have definitely, it would have been very noticeable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that they were really kind, very supportive. But I think by the time I got to CrossFit, yeah, I'd knocked out probably, I don't know, whatever it was. I didn't monitor it or check it, probably 60 to 70% of the symptoms.
Yeah.
But yeah, I massively improved. And then whenever I did tell them, they thought, actually, do you remember whenever you did that? I went, yep. It was okay. That makes sense now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but my friends and family and the kids, well, the kids, once they got past the being annoyed that why are you telling us now? Yeah, friends, they were probably really quite surprised. So very, very fortunate.
Yeah.
And I believe it's all down to the active choices I made, Bill. I really do.
Right.
And there's people there, if you're familiar with Parkinson's, you'll just say, well, maybe it was a honeymoon period because, it's the problem with this disease is you don't know how it's going to map out, and everybody's journey is different. And somebody might go from stage one, two, three very quickly, and then there's a big pause before four, etc., etc. But they do talk about the honeymoon phase where just miraculously you just have a bit of a honeymoon and symptoms don't progress. And that's been suggested to me, but I don't believe that's the case with me because
Yeah.
I didn't have a honeymoon period. I put the thing in reverse
Right.
and I backed it right up to before the start line. So I don't think it's the honeymoon period. Um, Interestingly, well, not interestingly, more importantly, something that's been uh, an amazing thing to be part of is because of the media that's gone out and the interaction I've had with people. Like the first year or two, I made myself very, very open and accessible to people. I'm not alone here, Bill. other people have done the same.
Yeah.
And I've had many as a conversation. Now, the overwhelming majority that try it don't, but they don't get exactly what I've got. But I'm not on my own. I can cite examples of people that have done the same. It's not, I'm not a freak. Well, not in that regard. Not in that
Right.
regard. I'm not a freak. And
Right.
yeah.
So no
So
researchers have said, hey, let's tap into Scott's brain here and figure out what is he doing or what's going on here that we can maybe help others with.
yeah, there's a bit of that, but not in the UK. UK healthcare is a very different system.
Yeah.
It's a National Health Service, which of course does an amazing job. Everything is free, which is probably a bit incredulous to Americans,
Oh yeah.
but it's public money. It's got to be ultra cautious. They won't do anything until there's a 5-year trial and yada, all that stuff. So
Right.
that's quite frustrating. But yeah, no, there's some interest, and
Yeah.
there's definitely good work.
Well, somebody
There's
needs to
definitely good
tap
work.
into you. Yeah. Somebody needs to figure out what you're doing right here, so to speak. What kinds
Yeah.
of things, Scott, did you notice that you were struggling with before that now have become easier for you since you made this commitment to, nutrition and movement, et cetera?
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think everything. And we were talking before we started recording, and let's just take Parkinson's off the table, if we may, for a second. How do I feel having been overweight, not full of beans, not full of energy, constantly tired, fatigued, uh, bloated from crap nutrition, probably a bit jaded from bad nutrition? How do I feel now compared to that, where I exercise? I have got a degree of strength, a lot more so than the average person in the herd. In my age, I have more energy. I feel better. I'm told I look better. I wear much, I don't look like Tony Soprano anymore. And yeah, it's pretty much everything, Bill, as you'd imagine. But you know that you coach people, and you have that great story. That the guy's name I've forgotten. The guy who went from 350 pounds down to a really good athlete. I
Oh yeah.
think.
Well, David Clark. Yeah. The
Sorry,
guy.
David Clark.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, but um, I went blank on his name. That's just being 59, I think. Um, yeah, just in every way, in
Yeah.
every way. Oh, the one thing I haven't mentioned is medication, meds.
Right.
I was only on them about, I don't know, 4.5 years ago. They didn't do anything, probably made my symptoms worse, which, to the credit, the medics said might happen. And I stopped taking them. And I don't take any medication. And the people that I do
Wow.
speak, and the people that I do meet and check in with, mentors, probably a bit formal, but just there's a lot of people had contact with me. And I would say probably the one of the biggest annoyances, well, one of many, is the amount of meds they're taking.
Right.
Yeah.
Which
And
is the
even whenever it's,
standard fare. That's what our whether it's your National Health Service or the American medical system. That's kind of the status quo. Is let's fill people with meds there and see what works.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's medicate our way out of it. At what point do you think you should stop taking those medications, those meds, if things aren't improving? What do you think, Bill?
Well, I would say almost immediately if you don't see things improving, or is it a matter of are you supposed to have patience and say, well, it's not working, keep doing it until something happens? I mean, I think most of those things, you're going to see the results in a fairly short amount of time, at least something incremental. But if it's not working, no, I'd say chuck them.
Yeah, not going to disagree with that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell anybody to throw your meds out, but yeah, I think
And as
society,
you've seen, you started seeing improvements fairly quickly from what you were doing.
I
And
did, and
and
I
that's
was
that's
really
the
fortunate.
yeah,
Sorry,
but
and I interrupted.
no, but no, I think to your point is when you see that something is working, yes, you continue doing it. And as you said, very shortly, you did see market improvements.
Yeah, and it's so much easier to be motivated from that space, isn't it? Massively.
Yeah, and the thing is, the side effects might be, oh, I'm sore, or maybe I've got a little tendonitis in my shoulder, whatever. But those kind of side effects are usually far more, I don't want to say pleasant to deal with, but more acceptable than some of the side effects you may get from meds, right?
Yeah, yeah, that would be my opinion. Absolutely. And here's the thing, people just say, "Oh, do you not get injured? Do you not do that?" Well, I haven't. I've had one or two injuries, but compared to what I'm doing, no, absolutely not. And CrossFit does get a bad name for itself in some regards. I think the average affiliate, the guy in his garage or small business, you're not going to see that. There will be some big ones where it's a bit more commercial and they're a bit more interested in their Instagram picture and what attire they're wearing to the gym. But like 90% of CrossFit ain't about that.
Right.
100% not. So what I would love people to get out of my story and what I'm now doing, I'm starting to get a lot more engaged in this in a professional capacity is to be curious about, okay, what if I did that? How might my life improve? Whether you're ill, whether you're not, whether it's Parkinson's, whether it's whatever it is, um, try to be curious about how might you improve your life, and just step back and ask yourself, or pretend you're asking their friend and say, "Hey, Bill, how did I look on the beach? How do I look like for energy and keeping up with the kids and keeping up with stuff?" Try to role play that and give yourself an honest answer. And then maybe look at your father, your grandfather, depends how old you are, and just think, right, we all know people that are just not really enjoying retirement, not enjoying the golden years, to use an old phrase. And then there's other people that are absolutely smashing it
Right.
and they're loving it and they're enjoying it. And with the advancement of medical science, we're going to live longer. So if you don't
Live
act
longer
on
and better.
this,
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, to your point there, Scott, several years back, I decided to become vegetarian and eventually vegan, and I had other reasons, but in the end, it was like I was finding out I was feeling so much better. And it wasn't just because I was like, hey, I feel good. I'm not taking the lives of more animals and doing whatever to the environment. I was
yeah,
physically feeling better, and then I worked with a nutritionist, and she analyzed what I was doing and had me make some tweaks there, including adding more omega-3 foods and fermented foods into my diet. And all of a sudden, my energy was off the charts. And but it was just a matter of trying some things. Let's see how that works out. And then um, I, oh, where was I going with this now? I got into crap. I can't remember. There was another example I was going to use there about how
yeah,
I started looking into some other area, and it's
yeah,
like,
just
wow,
about
it
maybe
just
being about being curious about future you and life expectancy and not being chronically ill if we're going to live longer. I think that's where we were, was it?
yeah, no, it changes the quality of life for sure, and it's not just
Yeah,
living longer, but living a better quality of life out there.
yeah. And the point I was making was, if we're going to live longer, and I don't particularly want to live longer than, the average life expectancy is fine with me. Um, but most of the nation, most of the Western world are going to be chronically ill because they don't look after themselves.
Right?
And, we're just putting so much crap into our bodies. And even whenever you're eating clean, it's hard not to eat crap. It really is. Everything's so processed. I live for bread. If
Yeah.
my own followers will be bored hearing me say this, but whenever I was a kid, whenever mum bought a loaf of bread, it went off after 4 days. I buy a loaf of bread now; it's good for a fortnight. So the only
Yeah.
reason that is because the crap they're putting into it.
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny. I've even noticed drinking plant milk lasts a lot longer than dairy milk, and um,
yeah, well, I've read some scary stuff about some of this plant milk.
right, right,
I'm not judging vegetarians or vegan. It would be no, I would frequently go to eat a vegetarian meal. I have, like you, I've ruled out certain things. There's certain things I certainly know that if I eat, I'm going to feel sluggish and my digestive system isn't going to like it.
right.
Um, that's about as far as I've gone with nutrition, but I think it's been far enough for me to date. And that's a moving target, you know. I became gluten intolerant, I don't know, about 15 years ago. Why did that happen? I developed hay fever for the first time 3 summers ago. Why at
Yeah.
the age of 56 or 55 or whatever it was? Why? I don't know. Everything's a
Well,
moving target.
yeah, well, it's like, a lot of environmental factors have played into why there's gluten intolerances, there's peanut allergies that certainly never
Yeah,
existed when we were kids. I mean, now every school has a peanut-free table in the cafeteria.
right.
Whereas nobody had a peanut allergy when I was growing up. And well, I know I was thinking of before too was I had a sweat test done last summer,
A
and again, it was
sweat test.
sweat test. It was out of
Oh,
curiosity because
right.
I was having muscle cramps. And I started thinking about, wow, this has been plaguing me for 30 years. And I've never done anything about it. And so I found out how much sodium I was losing in my sweat, as well as the volume I was losing. And, again, it's part of that whole process of being curious about what can I do to improve the way things are going. And I'm finding out that, you know, I just need to make some adjustments when I run. And sure enough, the last ultra marathon I ran, I did not have muscle cramping. And and I was a human salt shaker by the end of it. I was drinking so much fluid and taking in so much sodium, but at the same time, it's all about that. Again, whether it's adding fermented foods or going vegetarian, you kind of check things out, see what works, and if it keeps
Yeah,
working, you keep doing it.
yeah. I'd never heard of a sweat test. That's amazing. I'm gonna have to Google that stuff. Um, yeah, no, absolutely. I think it starts with curiosity. If you don't have any desire to improve your situation, whether you're chronically ill or just a normal dude or a normal girl, if you have no desire and you're 100% satisfied with whatever's going on in your life, then ignore the next 30 seconds. But if you have any desire or curiosity to maybe change something, I would encourage you, excuse me, to then increase your knowledge
Right?
on whatever it is you want to improve. And then whenever you've got a reasonable degree of knowledge, maybe a bit of inspiration from YouTube, TikTok, books, whatever, then I think what I believe is, you probably can't see it because I've got a white wall, the gap between knowledge and curiosity, okay, starts to close.
Yeah.
And somewhere in that gap, if you act on it, I bet you're going to see results if you've got a good mindset on it and you have the desire to do it and you're curious and you're educated. And I would say maybe don't act whenever you're there or there. Maybe whenever that gap's getting a bit closer and you just keep those positive thoughts and energy and desires towards that. I think you'd be surprised what you can achieve in the boardroom, on an ultramarathon, in the military, taking the first step out the door because you're agoraphobic or anxious.
Yeah.
That would be my advice.
Super sage advice right there. Thank you. What else should somebody take from this? What other knowledge from our conversation here about your experience?
I think that's going to be really quite subjective. I think that's going to be depends on your listeners, and
Yeah.
they're all going to have different aspects of life. What do they take? I mean, I hope the general story, and there's a lot more. If you just there's a lot more on social media. We'll come on to how to access that in a minute, but hopefully even just this story might maybe motivate you, maybe inspire you. That would be
Right.
lovely. I think if you have Parkinson's or a loved one or somebody you care for has Parkinson's or a comparable disease, I hope that maybe you might consider doing a wee bit of what I've done. Just consider it or be curious about it and find out a bit more and
Right.
close that gap and get closer to act on it. And for the people who are maybe had started that journey off before this podcast, then I would just say, just please believe, just please keep those expectations high and do the reps. Now, whether do the reps is staying off the sugar, staying off the crap carbs, whether doing the reps is walking, losing the musical instrument, doing something that's cognitively intense, whether doing the reps is your meditation, your mindfulness, your gratefulness and just sorting out that mindset. Just keep doing the reps, and I'd be surprised if your life doesn't improve. I think I think if people can take part or some or whatever resonates out of that, Bill, I think that would be a result. That's a bloody hard question you've asked me at the end.
Well, I'm not one to throw a lot of softball questions out there. I could,
Yeah,
talk
okay.
about like what's the favorite food in Northern Ireland or whatever. I don't know, but but no, no, I think that's fantastic. I love that answer, and it's um, it's something somebody can take something away from for sure, whatever their situation. And I'll ask you one more here that I'm not going to ask you to predict where Scott is going to be, in his Parkinson's journey because you don't know. But where are you going to be though in terms of spreading the word in this mission that you have right now? Where do you see yourself moving with all this right now?
Right. Okay. So let me just tackle your non-pre question and give you a non-answer.
Okay.
I've had brain scan and other work done since my my symptom reversal because obviously I'm of interest in neurology, and the most recent brain scan that was done post me being symptom free would say you have Parkinson's. So at a current analysis and neurological level, I have Parkinson's. What am I going to do with this? So I'm definitely more engaged in this. It's not my life's work yet, but I'm going to be doing a lot more where I'm going to be helping people as individuals, probably more to corporate or more to group level, whether that be the chronic illness side of the Parkinson's level or just the enhanced performance, resilience, trying to change or improve or adapt a mindset. I haven't told anybody this yet, so I better tell my family before this gets published.
Okay.
I'm I'm co-authoring part of a book. It's actually a series of books called Start Over. And it's going to be really exciting. It's very global. It's not UK or Ireland. It's global. There's as many US or Australian or Asian or all over the place Europeans contributors where people are who have made remarkable turnarounds in their lives or recoveries from
Yeah.
something that they would not ordinarily be part of. And they're all being profiled. So that's really exciting. And I'm meeting the most amazing people there. And there's going to be some great stories and really motivational stuff coming out. So I'm co-authoring a book at the minute. I've never written anything before. So that's been a good neurological challenge as well as a good experience. So I think my edition will be hopefully published in August. And yeah, I've really only shifted uh, to this space on a more intentional level, as I've just described. It's still very recent. So
Yeah.
at the minute, probably it's day one because I used to do all this in my personal accounts and my social media, but I realized that that was no longer appropriate. So I'm literally on week two, nearly at ground zero of building that. So Instagram, thrive underscore happens, that is live. But I saw you added me today, Bill. Thank you very much. That's
Part of my
very, very,
research.
yeah, there wasn't much there, but we're building on that. So
Right.
that would be good. And then if you go to thrivehappens.com, hopefully that will be live very soon. And I'm not a hard person to track down. I definitely never going to work for MI6 or CIA. If you Google Scott Hanley Belfast, Scott Hanley Parkinson'S, yeah, there's going to be a lot on me. But maybe you could put the link down in whatever way you push this out, Bill. That would be great.
Of course.
But
Very
I
happy
am
to.
I am pretty much at ground zero on this, and certainly month one, maybe not week one, but month one. So I'm really excited. It's been a long time coming, and
Yeah.
what I mean by that is this is such a cheesy thing to say. It kept finding me. Everything the last 3 years, it just kept finding me. People said, "Could you do this? Could you do that?" I was asked to be guest in the event with a Canadian medic was talking Gabor Mate and the organization around that. I'm in conversations with. It just kept on finding me, and I decided that, and I was doing a lot over the last 2 or 3 years with individuals. I just thought, this is so rewarding. It really fills me up. It's so different from my day job. Um, I think it's time that I maybe answered a bit of a call or took a bit of action on that.
No, very cool. No, I
So
absolutely do that. Yes, I love it.
I am. It's exciting, and it's really exciting, and I hope that people can benefit from it. Thanks very much for asking.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, if you need a book editor or proofreader for what you're writing, let me know. That's
I
my
will.
wheelhouse there.
Yeah.
And the other thing is I want to be able to read that Start Over publication because those are the kind of people we love to feature here on this podcast. So I'm sure there's some great stories there. So
Oh,
I'm looking
uh,
forward to seeing that and maybe connecting with some of those folks.
okay. That is a deal. I will do just that. The first episode is on pre-sale. First episode, the first volume is I think is 12 people in each one, and they're writing themselves. Obviously, then it's going to be there'll be a ghost editor, and it'll be very, very, very high class professional production. So I will absolutely make sure that you are kept in the loop on that. And yeah, oh my goodness, I listen every Monday night. I listen to other people's stories in their first reading, before they've it's been touched by a professional writer. And oh wow, it's just amazing what people can do and how they can turn around. It's been real therapy just being part of that process. And no matter what comes out of it, I'm talking about, financially, that's absolute byproduct is absolutely mind blowing. Um,
I'm
I heard
sure it
about
is. Yeah.
it is. I know I could talk about it for an hour now, so I won't. I promise, Bill, I will make sure you are connected to that. Doubtless there's people there that you'd be interested in, as are your listeners.
As you said before, groovy. So thank you very much.
Did I say groovy? Okay, groovy. All right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
No, it's an expression I love to use every now and then with young people because they look at me like, "How old are you?"
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. I think I've got an emotional and mental age of about 27, maybe younger.
All right.
Yeah, and it's a thing in the family. It's from watching too many Scooby Doo's when the
Nice.
kids were young. Bill, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I always learn a lot about myself with these podcasts from other hosts. So thank you so much for your questioning and your insights and your thoughts. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. And hopefully you and your listeners really enjoy it.
I'm sure they will, and it's been my great pleasure too. This has been so special hearing about your inspirational story, and I know this is not nearly the midpoint even of your whole journey here in terms of getting the word out and sharing it with everybody. So thank you so much for sharing it with us here.
Okay. Thank you. My pleasure.
You
Okay. Bye.
bet.